Hi, I'm Brian Lord, and welcome to this book signing with Jon Acuff, for his new book, All It Takes Is a Goal. You can check this out at premiercollectibles.com/Acuff. And so we're going to start off here talking a little bit about the book. John's going to share the story behind how it was made, and then we will get into your questions. So make sure to put in those questions. We already got some started here, but we'd love to have any of your questions for Jon. So Jon, thanks for coming on here at premiercollectibles.com.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to tonight.
So what was the original idea? So you've had a ton of bestsellers. Like you've run out of fingers to have bestsellers on. So what was the impetus behind All It Takes Is a Goal?
Well, it started with a place you and I both know pretty well, Stanford University. So I went to school in Birmingham, and my wife went to the same college, and we took our oldest daughter on a tour a couple years ago. And standing there on campus, my wife said, wasn't college an amazing experience? Wasn't it the best? And I was having the opposite experience. I was thinking, wow, what a waste. What a train wreck. At college, I was just a knucklehead, rejected from every frat, bad grades. And I thought, what a wasted potential. And as I drove home to Nashville, I was thinking about that, but I'd just written this book, Soundtracks, about mindset. So I knew I could change my mindset. So I thought, what if I could live into my potential? I can't do anything with those 4 years in college, but I might have 40 years ahead of me. Can I figure out how to tap into my potential going forward? And then I thought, I wonder if other people feel that way. Do other people feel they're not living up to their potential? So commissioned a research study with a PhD named Mike Peasley. He's a professor here in Nashville. And we asked 3,000 people if they feel like they're living up to their potential, and 96% of people said no. So then I knew, wow, it's not just me. And 50% of those people felt like 50% of themselves was untapped, which is like only opening half your Christmas presents every year. And so I realized, okay, it's worth spending a few years to figure that out, because there's a lot of people who feel the same way. And I want to figure out my potential and help other people figure out their potential too.
Mm-hmm. And so what's kind of that first step? You go from this dejected dad, you commission this study, dejected dad at Stanford, at your wasted potential, and then you go through these steps to figure out if other people are feeling the same way. A lot are. What's kind of that first step, that Tuesday morning action that people can take to get better?
Well, so what happens is when you figure out you want to do more in life, you automatically run into what I call a vision wall. And a vision wall says you have to know your perfect vision for the next 10 years. People think, I got to begin with the end in mind, so I need to know where I'm headed for the next 10 years. And you run into this massive wall, and it feels really challenging, and people give up in that moment. So for me, the way I got around the vision wall, instead of trying to guess my future in the next 10 years, which is impossible, I did this exercise that I teach in the book called the best moments list, where I looked backwards and said, okay, what are the things that have lit me up the most over the last 5 years, last 10 years, last 20 years? So in Augusta airport, I was at a premiere gig. You guys had booked me to speak in Augusta. I was at a small airport, and I wrote best moments on top of a piece of paper, and I started to list them out one by one by one. And I thought I would try it for 10 items, 20 items. I ended up writing 170 items.
Wow.
And it became this really interesting exercise, because one, it taught me gratitude. It actually showed me things I'd forgotten that I was really grateful for. Two, it taught me self-awareness. If you ask your head and your heart to look for best moments in your past, you automatically start looking for them in the present. You start to notice things as you're in the moment. And then three, it became this path forward, because I wasn't guessing what I cared about. I wasn't coming up with, well, maybe I want to do this. Maybe this is a fantasy. I was saying, wow, these are the things that light me up, and what happens when you do this exercise. And I taught hundreds of people of it, how to do it before the book. That's the thing. My books changed when I started teaching them first and writing them second. So I don't write this in an office and go, I hope this helps. I write the ideas, and then I teach it to hundreds, sometimes thousands of people. And then I figure out what works. And then eventually it ends up in a book. So I taught this to so many people, and everybody has the same experience. You do the best moments list, and you automatically go, I want more of that. Like, why don't I have, like, what if instead of accidentally having those moments, I can plan those moments? How do I do that? And when you get to that moment, then you go, I'm going to need a goal. And that's what the book's about. The book is, okay, you find a desire, and then all it takes to accomplish it is a goal. Let me show you how to turn that into a goal.
Yeah, and I love too what you did with the different types of things that you're grateful about. Like some people are like, I accomplished that goal, and some people are all about the experience. Like, what are those 4 different things, and what do you learn about yourself when you figure out where most of those come from?
Yeah, so what happens is you have this massive list, and then I thought, is there some way to categorize them? Are there similarities? And it was like one of those moments where you stare at one of those posters from the 90s where something pops out of the back. Remember those 3D posters?
Yeah,
It'd be
yeah,
like, it's a sailboat with a
yeah.
unicorn. I looked at the list and I realized that they all four fit into four different moments: an accomplishment, an experience, a relationship, or an object. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. If you go on a hike by yourself, you go and you hike Radnor Lake near us by yourself, that's an experience. If you go with a friend and you get to pour into them because they're going through a divorce, that's a relationship moment. If you hike it faster than you've ever hiked it, that's an accomplishment moment. If you pick up a rock or a pine cone while you're there to remember that moment, that's an object. So what happens is people started to label their lists, and where it gets really fun is it becomes what I call the most honest personality test that's ever been invented, because you look at it and go, oh, wow, 40% of my list were relationship based. No wonder I'm in a funk right now. I don't have the amount of relationships that light me up. Or you go, wow, accomplishments are what drives me, but I grew up in a family where accomplishment was seen as greedy or not something I should do. So I've always kind of watered it down, but I'm really an accomplishment person. Or wow, objects don't matter to me, but I've been trying to inspire myself to do goals because I'll get objects. No wonder I'm stuck. I don't really care about objects. And so it gives you this very clear path forward to go, okay, these are the things I really care about, and I'm going to deliberately put more of them in my life, and I'm going to use goals as the pathway.
And I like too also how you built in, because you had soundtracks, which is sort of that mental side of things.
Sure.
How do you go through the mental side, like having that sort of truth talking as you are going through to try and build your life more towards those things?
Well, first you give yourself lots of grace. That's what happens. People go, I want to do a goal, and sometimes they hit this automatic feeling of shame of, I should have done it sooner. This would have been easier. Like, I want to get in shape. So you're 44 and you say, I want to get in shape, and you go, oh, I should have done it when I was like 34. It would have been, or I want to prepare for retirement. Finances, big goal for people. And you go, I'm 48, I should have started. We always hear that compound interest story. If you save when you're 12, you're a millionaire in an hour and a half. And you go, oh, I should have started earlier. So you have to give yourself lots of grace when it comes to like the mindset side of things. You have to give yourself lots of time. It's funny with goals. There's certain goals we think will be fast, but other goals we know will be slow. Nobody ever says, I got a goal to learn Italian. I think it's going to take like 2 weeks. Like you would say, no, that's not how Italian works.
Yeah.
But people go, I want to write a book. I want to get in shape. And 2 weeks in, they're frustrated. They go, oh, it's not working. But if you said, I'm going to learn Italian in 2 weeks, you go, no, I'm not. Like that's not. Yeah. So you have to give yourself lots of grace, lots of time. And then what's really fun is when you have other people that do the journey with you. That's what I think. The books I like to write, they get shared. And we've had events where it's funny. I've done premiere events where I'll be somewhere and the CEO will go, do you know why you're here tonight? I go, no, why? And he goes, well, my wife was listening to a podcast about weight loss and your book was on there and you were on there and she said I should read it and now you're here. And what happened was the wife was able to give the book to him and say, hey, I think you should check this out. So it becomes this really fun communal activity too as you go, wow, I think I can build a best moments list. I think my spouse can build one. I think my kids can build one. And so that's part of the mindset too, is you're not meant to dream alone. You're meant to dream with other people.
Yeah. Is that one of the things you found when you worked with all these different people? Like what are some of the things you're like, aha, as you're working with people?
Yeah. So they're always surprised. They're like when you see yourself in the list, you're surprised. They always feel like they should do more than they can at first. Like you kind of have to have a pace. Like, because what happens in the book I talk about, there's 3 performance zones. There's the comfort zone. We've all heard that one. Everybody talks about it. But the really dangerous zone is the chaos zone, where you go from doing nothing in comfort and then you go, I'm inspired, I heard an Eminem song, I'm do it all. And you go over to the chaos zone. And that's what happens in January, for instance. Most people never make it out of January with their New Year's resolutions. And part of the reason is they went to the chaos zone. They tried to do it all at once. They said, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to learn yoga. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to get a dog. And it's too much. It's chaos. And in the middle is the potential zone. So that was a consistency. People trying to do more than they think they can. We say, go big or go home. There's all these kind of, I would say, like Instagram wisdom that is actually pretty harmful. Yeah. So when you say go big or go home, most people go home. Like, because they have this goal, or like your goal should be so big it terrifies you. Terror is the bar for when I know I'm doing what. Like, no, that's not sustainable. Like, that's not a really fun life. And so I would say that was the surprise, was like figuring out bit by bit, like, No, that's not helpful. And then the other thing I'd say, a surprise for me was how many different ways people could execute the ideas. So one of the things I'm excited about in the book is there's 40 stories of real people. So if I write a book in my office by myself, I better hope you identify with me because it's just my story. But we've known each other for 10 years, 12 years at this point. I'm 47. Like, God forbid I write another book that's a memoir. Like, I haven't done that much. Like, at 47, I shouldn't be like, I found a different part of my life that you should care about. Yeah. So what I like in the book is that because of the process, sharing the book and teaching it before I publish it, there's real people that have poked holes in the ideas and said, here's how I did it. This didn't work. So like Susan Robertson, for instance, she got her bachelor's degree and she did it in the car rider pickup line as a mom. She bit by bit would watch 20 minutes of a video, do a little bit of assignment. So she's a busy mom. I would never argue that any mom isn't a busy mom. Yep. But she said, you know what? I think I'm capable of more. I think that I have potential. I'm not going to listen to the excuse I don't have enough time. I'm going to go out and find time. So for me, I was constantly surprised at people's ability to use the ideas in different ways and really sprint with them.
What were the biggest holdups? I know you've talked about a little bit, with that. Where is the biggest danger zone when you're trying to accomplish your goals?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is fear. We talked about fear a little bit, and fear can come in a variety of forms. So it can be fear, like perfectionism. Like, it has to be perfect, and as soon as it's perfect, I'll start. It's never going to be perfect. Procrastination. It can be distraction. Like, sometimes people say, why is it hard to accomplish goals? And I'll say, it's hard to accomplish goals because Netflix is easy. Instagram is easy. Like, you're up against 50,000 of the world's greatest developers who have ever lived. And I even just thinking about that with my daughter. I have 2 teenage daughters. We were on a road trip last week. I'm going to see some friends in Atlanta, and she said, Mom, I just saw this ad on Instagram for these Lululemon shorts. They're exactly what I wanted. She got a targeted ad on a road trip. That happened 0 times to me when I was a kid. I never saw her targeted. I was never pitched while I was driving. I could see like south of the border billboards or like Buc-ee's like now, but I was never targeted to shop. And so you have to realize distraction technology has scaled faster than our ability to focus. And so sometimes it's hard to do goals because there's so many other things vying for your time in a very elegant way. And so you have to stack the odds in your favor and go, okay, it's going to be hard for me to write, or it's going to be hard for me to work out. How do I stack the odds in my favor? And so I think a lot of times we don't give ourselves enough credit that distraction has changed and we have to change too.
Absolutely. And just for those watching, make sure to go to premiercollectibles.com/Acuff where you can get these books here. And John's going to start signing some here in a second.
Yeah, let's go.
So let's get some listener watcher questions here for you. And so the first one is Stephen from Michigan. What inspired you to write and release this book now?
I think what inspired me now is that I saw the need. I look for 3 things when I write a book, Stephen. I look for 1, a personal connection to the content. I think you can tell when somebody's written a book with their hands but not their heart. And it's technically true, but it's not heart true. And so I look for something I deeply care about in my own life that I want to change. So I wanted to change my potential and I wanted to live it in a different way. And then I look to people actually need it. Am I hearing about it when I'm at events? Am I hearing about it at the neighborhood pool? Am I seeing people talk about it online? And the third thing I look for is there space for me in the marketplace? Has it been done a million times already? And so with this book, I had a deep connection. I saw the need. We did the study. And then the third thing, when I looked at the word potential, a lot of resources were very fuzzy about it. They were very kind of holistic. And I wanted to know, okay, what do I do with this on a Tuesday? Okay, it's great. I want to be inspired. Don't get me wrong. I don't like to read books or go to events where I'm really inspired, but by the time I get to my car, I go, what was that I was going to do with that? So I wanted to write a book about potential that somebody could say, now here's how I execute it on a Tuesday. Here's what I do with this as a busy mom, as a busy dad, as a college student, as a retiree, so that it was practical and tactical. And so once I had those 3 things, I knew it was time to write this particular book right now.
Awesome. All right, so next question from Candace in Minnesota. Is there one main gold nugget you want your readers to take from this book?
Yeah, I mean, the big kind of need I'm trying to fill is I think you're capable of far more than you think. I think you have more gifts to open, and I think there's ways to do that. And life is really fun when you start to open more of your gifts. Another way I'd say it is like, busy, happy people don't have time to hate. They're just too busy. They're too busy doing things they really care about. Another way I say it is I want you to find a joy you love so much that it makes Netflix boring. See, nobody wakes up and decides to change their life. Nobody goes, I think I'll just have grit today. I think I'll have persistence. I think I'll just have willpower. What happens is you find something you desire more than staying stuck. So nobody just willingly leaves their comfort zone. You shouldn't. It's comfortable. What happens is you get a glimpse of something that's even better and you go, oh, I'm willing to change my life for that. I'm willing to change how, what time I get up. That's what happened to me in Atlanta. I'm 34 years old, so 13 years ago. And I start blogging on the side of my day job, and I realize, wow, I really like this. Like, I can communicate with people online. I can share ideas. And that's what made me start getting up earlier. I didn't decide one day to get up early because it was a mature thing to do. Blogging was so fun that I wanted to throw more time at it. So what happens is once you discover something like that, it's like every hour is a log and you can't throw enough into a fire. So I stopped watching as much TV. I started getting up earlier because I had that desire. So my hope with this book, if you said, what's the one nugget, is you'll find something you love so much that it starts to pull you toward it. And then the book gives you practical, actionable steps you can do to amplify it.
Okay, awesome. So now I'm going to make up a listener question here. So Minnie from Poughkeepsie asks.
Poughkeepsie, all right.
Poughkeepsie, I have it. I was been watching Mickey Mouse with my twin 6-year-old. So Minnie from Poughkeepsie asks, what is one of those? If you had all those presents off to the side that you're missing, what's one that you opened up in the process of writing this book?
Learning to be a leader. For years, one of my broken soundtracks was, well, I'm an artist, not a leader. I'm just an artist, I'm a writer, I'm just chaotic, I'm not detailed. And writing this book and learning how to lead my team and lead my family and learning how to say, no, I think I can learn to be a leader. It might not be something that naturally comes to me as easy as some other things do. But in order for me to grow, in order for me to accomplish the goals I want, to get this message to as many people as possible, I need to lead my small team. How do I open that gift? How do I put time toward that gift? And how do I treat it with respect? Because it's going to take time. I'm going to need some easy goals and some middle goals and some guaranteed. I'm going to have to climb the goal ladder, if you will. So how do I do that? So learning how to be a leader is one of the things that came through this book.
Yeah, that's awesome. And by the way, for those who don't know, Jon also has a podcast. And I thought that was interesting. You're talking about those leadership things that you were learning, like how you communicate and the difference between you being obvious about whether you're brainstorming or directing.
Oh,
which I thought was a really interesting thing. Okay, so next up, a real question from a real person. Lucas from California. When you're writing and hit a rut or a block, what are practical things you do to help you overcome?
Yeah, so I don't believe in writer's block. I believe in idea bankruptcy. So if I can't write, I just haven't collected enough ideas. So I'm a real big geek. I'm a huge idea geek about how do I structure ideas. So the process I use is I record them. So I've got a notebook right over there, just off camera. There's a notebook I brought just in case there's an idea.
Like physical notebook?
Physical notebook.
Okay, yeah,
physical notebook. So I record them. I review them because a lot of people, myself included, are idea hoarders. They collect a ton of ideas, but they don't do anything with them. And you need to imagine a really cluttered house and going, well, that wouldn't be a fun way to live. And the third thing I do is I release them. So I release them online. I share them with friends. I put them in a book. I put them different places. So that's the process I use. So if I'm doing those three things, I don't really get stuck. Now there's times when I hit a challenging part of a book and I'm like everybody else, I get frustrated, I get confused. But for me, if I'm being faithful to collect ideas, so if you say something interesting I've never thought about before, I might take out my phone or a notebook, depending on what I have with me, and write it down and go, oh, that's really interesting. I never thought about that way. And I'm collecting them. And then I sort them, I review them and go, that's a good book idea. That's a speech idea. That's a tweet. That's a reel. And I'm sorting them, or that's a family thing. I'm a big believer, the way you get better at Christmas gifts is you just listen all year and you take notes. Yeah. You should take notes on the people you care about. So I didn't become a great Christmas giver because in November I was like, ugh. Like what happened was I just had a file in my phone that says Jenny, that's my wife's name. And when we're somewhere and it's February and she goes, oh, you know what I really need is one of those blah, blah, blah. I pull out my phone, it takes 30 seconds. I write that down. And then when she gets that 10 months later, I'm the greatest husband in the world. And so that's what I mean. Like I'm in a habit of taking notes. I'm in a habit of reviewing them. And then I'm in a habit of releasing them.
Awesome. Let's hope Jenny's not watching this. She
is not, dude.
She's like, he waited 10 months to get me this?
She is not. She doesn't watch any, like she's like, I got it at home. I've heard these ideas.
Awesome. All right, so next up we've got Shannon from Colorado. What advice would you give to someone just starting out in the corporate world? What's something, it's two-part, and what's something you wish you would have known then that you do now?
Okay. Congratulations on being in the corporate world. Yeah. The quiet quitting movement is going to make your job so easy. There's so many people that are doing the bare minimum. Do more than the bare minimum. So as the world goes this way, go the opposite way. So what I wish I'd known earlier was that you play how you practice. So I had some corporate jobs where I didn't like them. I was frustrated and I wouldn't go above and beyond. But then what happened was, as I started this blog that I just mentioned, I really wanted to have full strength me on the weekends, but I couldn't go half strength all week and then turn it on the weekends. Yeah. You play how you practice. You can't have to your day job, your corporate job, and think you'll be amazing on the weekends. So the more I gave to my day job and was deliberate and enthusiastic and excellent, it was like I practiced excellence for 40 hours every week. And then guess what I got to be on the weekend? I got to be excellent. So seeing the relationship between how you live at work and how you perform on the weekends was game changing for me. That you're one person. Yeah. And then the other thing was I just started to see opportunity. So I got really invested in if the company I work at had a leadership program or an extra thing you could learn, I signed up for everything. Every additional thing I did because I was like, they're paying me to learn. Yeah. They're paying me to grow. I was the only person. We did a 3-day trip to Boston. This was in Atlanta at the time. 3-day trip to Boston, and it was for customer service representatives. I wasn't a customer service representative. I was a copywriter, but I said, hey, I'd really love to learn about that side of our business. Like, is there any way I could join us? They were thrilled. And we went to the Ritz. It was the Ritz-Carlton to study customer service. I slept in the Ritz-Carlton as part of my job. Now, if I had a grumpy, bad attitude about, I hate this job, I'm gonna give the bare minimum, these people don't understand, like it would have been completely different. But because I said, man, I'm gonna learn as much as I can in this building, and then I'm gonna connect with people that I think have the kind of career I want, and I'm gonna learn from them, and I'm gonna ask questions. Like, I think a corporate job is an amazing place to learn if you've got a good attitude.
Yeah, I remember reading that. That was like 3 books ago. But I remember thinking that like a lot of people's logic is, I'm going to save my energy for the weekends.
Yeah, no, dude, no.
Yeah,
so here's a principle people talk about. If you want to make sure something gets done, ask a busy person.
Yeah.
People that are high performing, like, you think Tom Brady puts on 40 pounds of fat and just lays around in the off season? Yeah. The top performers are very consistent and very deliberate about their actions, whether that's how I play on the weekend or how I play. Like I heard a stat the other day, the average NFL team has 16 hours of field time in a non-playoff year. 16 hours. Wow. Do you know the amount of hours they prepare for those 16? Like, so that's how I look at it is, okay, how do I practice this so I can really crush it on the weekend?
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, next one we have Delaney from Florida. What's been a highlight or pinch me moment in your career?
Oh, easy, dude. Opening for Dolly Parton at the Ryman. The Ryman Auditorium is like the mother church of country music. My kin, Roy Acuff, we're not close enough that I have money from it, but he was first cousins with my grandfather. There's a statue of him and Minnie Pearl in the lobby. So it's just it's on probably the top 10 places to play in America as far as musicians. And my dentist, Dr. Wells, who I love, puts on a charity event every year, and he's Dolly Parton's dentist. And he said, hey, would you come do comedy, like pure comedy, not kind of speaking ideas? And would you come do comedy? One of the people performing that night will be Dolly. And so to get to go do that, to do pure comedy, super challenging, sold out Ryman, and to get to meet Dolly Parton like that, I mean, that was obviously like one that I have a photo of and I think about. But I thought about this the other day. I spend my entire year for 50 45-minute segments a year. So my entire year is about getting on 50 stages for 45 minutes at a time. And I love it. I can't believe I get to do it. Like, it's my favorite thing in the world. And so that's a highlight moment that I can call to. But I have a blast when I get to, like, I'm going to talk to 250 insurance agents in a couple weeks. Like, I'm going to love that. Like, and I love the challenge too, because most of my audiences have never heard of me, and I have to win the conversation. I have to earn the right to tell them things, because understandably so, they're like, this isn't somebody famous. I don't have celebrity kind of opening doors that way. I love the challenge of making sure the content is sticky and engaging and relevant to them. And like, I told a joke to a 3,000 optometrist that destroyed, but would bomb in every other room except for optometrists. Like, the idea of going, how do I write something so specific to an optometrist that they go, that's hilarious, and that's exactly what my day is like. You nailed this challenge. I think of every speaking event like that. It's just so fun to me.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. So for those of you watching, listening, go to premiercollectibles.com/Acuff. And you can get an awesome
one of these.
Yeah, one of those. That one right there.
Maybe
that's
that
the one you get. Book number 14 signed. All right. Next up, we've got Eric from North Carolina. What led you into a career of writing and speaking?
Well, writing, it's funny you asked that, Eric. The book dedication, which is right here, is for Mrs. Harris, my third grade teacher in Ipswich, Massachusetts, who taught me that writing was easy if you make it a goal. So I believed I could be a writer because I had a third grade teacher, Mrs. Harris, who laminated a kind of collection of poems I wrote in the third grade and really made me feel like you could be a good writer. And so that was a spark planted in me years ago. And I always tell teachers whenever I get to talk to them, that's the challenge of teaching, is that often you don't get to see the end of the song. You get to be one verse. You get to be a verse in the third grade, and rarely do they come back and say, hey, 15 years ago, like, if you're a middle school teacher, an eighth grader never comes up to you and says, hey, I just want you to know that you're building a foundation in me that's going to be really valuable later on in life. And although I sometimes am grumpy, I recognize it and I value it. Like, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was a spark. Speaking wise, I really have to say, my dad's a pastor, so I grew up with the idea that speaking wasn't weird. I grew up with the idea that it could be fun even to structure something and share it on stage and use it to help somebody's life. And so I grew up around it. And then, went to school for advertising and copywriting, really loved writing advertising, and then started blogging, and that's when speaking started to come into the picture. But it was kind of a, several moments over a 30-year period.
So, out of curiosity, was your dad really good at the little sticky sayings? Like
he was.
Things? Yeah.
Well, he started a Southern Baptist church in New England, which was unheard of, which is unheard of in the 80s.
A Northern Southern Baptist.
Yeah, so he couldn't, there was no cultural Christianity where nobody had the shared language.
Yeah.
So for him to go into that environment, I was watching him go, I'm going to structure this humor this way, or like, here's something he says to me, he said, Jon, the way you spell love is T-I-M-E. Like, you don't get to say you love somebody that you don't spend time with. So that's a hooky, very sticky, like, the way you spell love is T-I-M-E. Like, that's easy to remember. So yeah, he definitely, he approached communicating that way. Like, so in addition to seeing him do it, as it made me feel like it was a normal thing to do, I also saw ways to do it. Like, he wasn't, like, I could have had a dad who was like very by the book and very dry and very, not expressive, but I didn't. I had a dad that would use humor and pop culture references and Seinfeld and like things to relate to the audience, and made me go, I think I could see that working.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Very cool. All right, next up we've got Thomas in Maryland. You discuss skills, character, relationships, and hustle. Which of these do you think is the most important, and why?
I think character. I think character is because when you start, you don't have the other three. Like, when you move to a new city, you don't have relationships. When you start a new job, you don't have the skills yet. Like, when when you begin something, maybe even your hustle isn't there yet, but character you always have. I always say, like, you bring you with you. Like, whenever you move to a new city, you bring your loyalty. You start a new job, you bring your integrity. So for me, that's the foundation. Like, you need all four because it'll fall apart if you don't have all four, but I really feel like the first one is the one that you need the most, which is character.
Awesome. All right, next up we have Lindy in Missouri. like the name. What if the company you're at is not supporting your development and growth? And then second part, what's the balance between paying rent and reaching your potential?
Paying rent. Oh, I like that question. These are great questions, Lindy. First thing I'd say is every bad boss is telling you the same thing. I dare you to get a better job. I dare you. And so I answer that dare. Like if you feel like this company, this boss, like if you feel like you've exhausted all your options, because depending on the size of the company, there's other paths. You can figure out, you know what, I could be in a different department, I could do a different role. So I'm not a quit right now guy. Like people read Quitter and would joke with me and go, I don't like that the first chapter is don't quit your day job. Because they wanted the book to say, screw the man, you got it. Like that's not my attitude at all. Like I think you can do amazing things within companies. But I also think that that's a good challenge to rise to. Like I want to be amazing. I want to be amazing at what I do. If I can't do that in this environment, and I've gotten wise counsel, like ask your friend who doesn't tell you to jump all the time. Ask your slow moving friend that asks hard questions and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking about, and get their opinion. Like be patient with it. Be deliberate about it. So that's what I'd say, you know, can you find somebody in the company that will? Can you find a different role within the company that will? And then you start to ask questions like the rent question, paying rent versus chasing your dream or fulfilling your potential is how much runway do you have? I'm very much risk adverse. It sometimes looks like what I do with my job that I'm like, I'm this risky guy, but I'm really not. When Jenny and I make financial decisions, we're very deliberate about, okay, well, how much runway do we have? I don't, you know, if we start something new, how long can we go until we need it to make money? Oh, wow. We have a year already saved up. Okay, we can take this risk, or wow, things are tight right now. We shouldn't take this risk. So I look at that and I kind of balance the two. So I'm not a guy that's like, people say like sometimes you got to jump and grow wings on your way down. That's not how gravity works at all. I think there's a lot of terrible people giving terrible advice about you got to just go for it. But for me, I connect the two. So rent and living my potential aren't enemies, they're partners. So if I had a job, you know, because you mentioned jobs, I would figure out, can this job become my venture capitalist for the next thing I want to do? Like I love that approach. I'm my own venture capitalist. I'm always going, I'm an angel investor in my next thing. So if I'm faithful to this job and I'm deliberate, what will it allow me to do? And then I get super nerdy and I start going, man, DoorDash just cost me 7 extra days on this job. Or like all the little things that you know, in addition to rent, that if I'm deliberate, wow, I can actually quit this job sooner if I'm patient. Or like, man, I have 7 subscriptions to 7 different video systems and I only watch one of them. Ooh, okay, what's that costing me in extra days at a job I might not like? So I really try to kind of have one life that's pushing in one direction, but I'm not a just go for it with no wisdom guy. But the last thing I would say is just be careful, Lindy, that when you ask questions or when you kind of think, well, I've got a rent, I can't do this, don't let your rent be the reason you don't try. There's a million things. Usually, especially on an easy goal at the beginning of a goal, it doesn't cost anything. I say that in the book. Easy goals shouldn't cost anything. So sometimes I'll meet people and they'll go, I would go for this goal, but I have my rent's really expensive. And I'll say, well, what are the free versions of that? Let's figure out the free versions. Like, it doesn't cost you anything to write. Like, you just got to find the time. Okay, it doesn't cost you anything to research business plans. Now, if you said to me, John, I have to go get an LLC and I have to hire a lawyer, those are later steps. Let's do the free steps first because you already have some expenses. Let's exhaust the free ones before we decide the rent is preventing you from dreaming. I think sometimes we lean on our excuses too quickly and we don't do the free stuff.
Nice. Lindy, you're going to take my job. All right, good question. All right, next up, David from Texas. When I think about making and writing down goals, it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah.
How do you dial in and focus on what really matters?
So I'd say do it the way that works best for you. Like maybe he's not a list guy. I'm a list guy. I love writing down a long list. A lot of people hate them. I shared an action tracker. I have a 30-day action tracker that I teach in the book. And I posted it online, and I love it. It fires me up. And this woman said, that is hideous and obnoxious and looks miserable. And she just left out 2 key words for me. For her, it was. For me, it was amazing.
Yeah.
So that's the problem with these types of books is that people go, you have to do it exactly this way. And if you don't, you're failing. So somebody who's a natural morning person goes, if you don't get up at 4 a.m., what are you even doing with your life? And they put their system on you as if it's the system. So what I like to do is go, okay, maybe you don't like writing down goals. That's okay. Like, are you an audio person? Are you a visual person? Like maybe you're more, I want to cut out pictures out of a magazine and put up on a board, or maybe I'm a music person. There's somebody in the book, their favorite thing to do when they have a difficult email to send is to turn on a song, and they have to have sent it by the end of the song. So that music inspired, like, will that work for everybody? Definitely not. There's other people that in the book that made a whole game, like a board game out of their goal. And like it was elaborate and crafty and artsy. And somebody else who's an engineer might go, I don't want to have to use glue and like popsicle sticks in my goal. Like I like an Excel spreadsheet. I'm not an Excel guy. My buddy has an Excel spreadsheet of all the segments of the Appalachian Trail he's done. He's an engineer, he's an accountant, like that's his brain. He loves tracking that goal via an Excel spreadsheet, not how I do it. So to this person, I'd say, man, you don't have to write them down if that's not your jam. I don't care how you execute it as long as you get the results. So if you do it via audio, if you do it conversation with a friend, if you do it via photos, whatever you want to do, as long as you're doing it, I think is the goal.
Awesome. All right, and just a quick reminder, go to premiercollectibles.com/Acuff, A-C-U-F-F, to get this wonderful book and signed by the author,
right here,
Jon Acuff. All right, next up, we've got Danny from Virginia. Outside of work, what do you like to do for fun to rest and recharge?
I love hiking. I've learned to love hiking. My wife is a big hiker, and I've learned to love it too. And so hiking in North Carolina, we went out to Flagstaff and Sedona in May with our kids. That was like, Sedona feels like a different planet visually. Like it made no sense to me. It was so beautiful. I like to run. I really enjoy running. And I love spending time with friends. I'm really learning to put value on relationships. There was a time in my life where I was so focused on work that I just didn't have time for them. And tonight I got to hang out with a friend of mine, David Nurse, and it was a really fun conversation. And so hanging out with friends, I love to read. I'm a big reader. I like fiction. And I'm trying to think what I love doing CrossFit, and I've added weights to my workout schedule about 18 months ago, and I've enjoyed that. And then family time. I've got, this weekend we're going to the Sanford-Auburn football game. That'll be fun, and we're going with both our daughters, and so or playing pickleball with one of my kids. So a lot of time with my wife, a lot of time with my kids.
Awesome. And so follow-up question, I'm just making up for Danny. What is one race you'd want to run and a dream place to hike that you haven't hiked?
Oh, race I want to, I want to do, there's a race down in 30A that is supposed to be really beautiful that my friend's done a couple times.
Yeah.
And, but the real one that's like deepest in my heart is the Disney half marathon. They do a Disney half marathon. We were there one time accidentally, and where I was like, why are all these people wearing medals? And the medals are super cool. And like, they look like the Millennium Falcon. So like I would nerd out on a Disney half marathon. That to me would be super fun. What was the second question?
Where hike? Dream place hike where you have not yet.
Pacific Coast Trail. Pacific Coast Trail. You have to win a lottery to do more than 500 miles. I don't know that we do more than 500 miles, but Pacific Coast Trail or the John Muir Trail on that side of the country, it's just 100 times more beautiful than the Appalachian Trail. Like the Appalachian Trail is cool. But there's a lot of fields. There's a lot of like side of a highway kind of stuff, where the Pacific Coast Trail is sculpted for beauty. So that that's definitely up there.
Okay, awesome. All right. Next up, we've got Morgan from Idaho. What is your favorite thing to do with your family? I know you just mentioned hiking. Morgan's
I love road trips. So we'll go on road trips. Super fun. We went to Disney a bunch when they were young. We went to Universal recently, and that was super fun. Like doing the Harry Potter world with them was fun.
Did you drink the weird drink? I can't remember.
Butterbeer.
There you go.
Yeah, totally. Of course. Hagrid's ride was like the best thing I've ever ridden. I love that. And then we just do walks. So we'll walk with my youngest daughter. My oldest is in college, but during the summer, all four of us would just do a couple loops around the neighborhood. I find that a walk without a phone is a great way to connect with a kid. And that's not to say that my kids are like, oh, we want to walk and we'll sing like Sound of Music while we go. Like, I'm not trying to make it sound like it's always easy. There's grumbling. Sometimes we'll go like, hey, we're going on a walk. Oh, I don't go on a walk. But when we're out there and we're enjoying it and kind of getting to connect, that usually ends up being pretty fun.
Awesome. All right, next up, we've got Charles from Kansas. How do you balance work and life?
Poorly. All right, that's the next question. No, I mean, I think there's probably a dozen different ways I do it. I took all of July off this year for the first time, and that was a big endeavor and was really fun. And I think my wife and my kids felt like I was really present, and it was hard for me to do that. The first 7 days I was kind of itchy for work, and I started preparing for that in February. And so I'm deliberate about vacation time. Thanksgiving, for instance, like I'm pretty deliberate about that. I'm deliberate about Christmas. And then I try to shut the office down. The challenge with laptops or with work from home is you're never done working. And so I try to, shut my laptop down. I also do activities like the last question where I can't work. I can't work hiking. You know what I mean? Like I can't work if I'm going on a family walk. Like I can't. And then I try to use soundtracks. So one of the soundtracks that helped me in a specific way, I had a book due in 2 weeks and we were going to Jackson Hole for a family vacation. And I knew I'd be tempted to be there, like physically present, but mentally absent, because I've done that 100 times in the past. So I wrote on a Post-it note, don't miss it, to remind myself. And I put the Post-it note up weeks before we went. And I looked at that 100 times, 1,000 times. So we go on the trip and I'm present enough to notice, wow, the pine cones on the street here are different than the ones we have in Nashville. Like the pattern, they're so different. So I take it and I carry it home 1,200 miles, which is a weird thing to do. But one of my soundtracks is I don't care if it's weird if it works.
Yeah.
And so now it's sitting on my desk because there'll be another time where I'm tempted to miss it. And now I've got a symbol. And so it's doing stuff like that. We're going, what's coming up? What is it like? Or ask Jenny, what would make you feel loved today? Like what would make you feel loved? And give her a chance to say like, oh, hey, here's something it would make me feel loved if blank. And then other practical things, like I deleted Twitter from my phone. So I still use it online. Like I still have a laptop and I'll tweet, but I never have my computer with me. So what happened was I got in this streak where I would be in the middle of a moment and I would stop and I would freeze in the grocery store to tweet some thought I had. And Jenny would be like, hey, I'm on the aisle 3, you're on aisle 5. And I'd be like stuck, like writing something for strangers about a box of pancake mix I saw. And like, so I had to eventually just delete the app entirely from my phone so that I could be present in the moment. So that might be extreme. Not everybody needs to do that. But for me, it was like I had an IV drip of social media and I had to kind of pull it out and go, I'm not against it. I'm still going to use it. It's part of my job, but I'm not going to do it on my phone.
Awesome. All right, and again, those of you watching, premiercollectibles.com/Acuff to get this wonderful book. All it takes is a goal. All right, next up, we've got Allison in Kentucky. For someone who is intimidated by public speaking, what would you say to them?
I would say you're already good at it. You do it all the time. You just don't give yourself credit. Anytime you talk to somebody, you're public speaking. So that's the first thing I'd say. You probably do it more than you know. Second thing I'd say is, it's like anything else. You practice it in small ways. And you expect there to be fear there. So the first time I spoke to 10 people, I have 10 person size fear. And I worked on it, and I worked on it, and I worked on it, and I did it a couple times, and then I got over it. But then I had 100 person size fear. And I had to go speak to 100 people, and I worked on it. And then I had 1,000 person fear, and then 10,000 person fear. So there's going to be fear there. Don't see the fear as failure. Like that's part of it. There's going to be anxiety, there's going to be nerves. But it's like anything else, you can get better at it. You can work at it. You can even start to enjoy it. The third thing I'd say is that the way I think about it is everybody there wants me to win. And what I mean by that is nobody wants to watch somebody fail. Like it's so uncomfortable to watch somebody be bad at something. It's amazing to watch somebody be good. Like it's amazing to watch Tom Brady or Michael Jordan or LeBron James, whatever, like to watch somebody. So everybody in the audience is hoping you do well. They're not against you. They're actually very much for you. And so that kind of helps me. And the other thing is that if you make a mistake, it makes you human. It doesn't make you a failure. It makes you human. And you get to kind of either react to the mistake and joke about it, or you just move on. If you make a mistake minute 3, nobody's remembering that by minute 6. Like they're in the moment with what you're creating. So you think I'm gonna say the wrong thing and it's gonna be monumental and I'm gonna, get laughed at and all this pressure, and it really doesn't work that way. So it's like anything else. You practice it, you realize the audience is for you, not against you, and you give yourself some grace with making mistakes.
What's the most afraid you've ever been on stage?
Most afraid I've ever been. I did a 3-hour event with FedEx. That was pretty intense. Like, it's often, so there's moments where they'll go, hey, we just want to do like a 40-minute Q&A. And I'm afraid when nobody's asking questions. And I've learned to have 40 minutes of backup content because like 40 minutes of tap dancing is a long time. But single event, I would say the first time I spoke at Catalyst and there was 13,000 people. And I know I was afraid because Heather Whitaker, Carlos Whitaker's wife, he's a great speaker, had to tell me right before I went on stage, like, you missed a belt loop. Like, I was so nervous, I had missed a belt loop. And that, like, I was terrified. I only had 10 minutes and it was a big deal. And so that was probably the most, and then the one that was the worst, I spoke at a music festival. You guys didn't book me on this. And it was middle of the day and it was a rap screamo music festival, which doesn't need a motivational speaker. And the problem with the middle of the day is there's no lights to show people where to look. So there's nobody looking. They were expecting this rapper named Lecrae to come out, and I came out. And I was like, what's the deal with self-development? Yeah. And like and there was another stage going on at the same time, and everybody just started to walk over there. That one was nervous, but I should have said no before. That was on me to go, nah, not gonna set me up for success. I'm not a great musician. Like Andy Mineo is gonna crush that. Jon Acuff, not the moment I'm built for. Thank you, I'm honored, but no thank you.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Next up, we've got Rich in California. What's been the coolest? We'll say second coolest. You've already said your coolest.
Yeah.
What's been the coolest experience you've had in your professional life?
I mean, hitting the New York Times bestsellers list was really cool. Like, I remember where I was when I got the phone call. Like, that was really
Where
neat.
were you?
I was in Texas. Okay. I was in Dallas. And Dave Ramsey called me and told me, hey, you hit the New York Times bestsellers list. So that was really cool. And then as far as like event, I did an event with Range Rover and Wyclef Jean. And so that was cool, like, because he's a Fuji. Like, he's been an ambassador to Haiti. Like, to hear the way he thought about things was really fascinating. I feel like my job is that I get to be on the front row of 50 of the best classrooms in the world every year. And if I pay attention, I get to learn every time I do it, and I get to bring that learning forward. So like, I look at it that way. So what happens is when the CEO of Ace Hardware says something really fascinating, I write that down and then I think about that. So I got to learn, like, having access to that many smart minds and people that are at the tops of organizations and that I get to learn from, like, it's certainly thrilling to get to do the Wyclef Jean stuff, but it's also thrilling to be like, man, that person is really sharp. And I got to go to school today, in essence, for 30 minutes, an hour, or whatever, with that person. I can't believe I get that opportunity.
Yeah, very cool. Next up, we've got, and first of all, don't forget, premiercollectibles.com /Acuff. We're getting close to the end here. All right, so Mary in Arizona, any advice when working for a difficult boss that doesn't encourage development and growth? This is kind of, I guess, part two to the earlier one.
Well, so again, like, I think sometimes with a difficult boss, they can be made less difficult if you figure out their value system. So I'll give you an example. I had a boss in Atlanta who loved long weekly updates from me. We'd have our weekly meeting. She wanted 3 pages of everything I'd done, like really long updates. We had a reorg. I got a new boss. I brought a new weekly report to him. It was 3 pages. He looked at it for 30 seconds, said, looks good, see ya. And I was crushed. And in that moment, I didn't create a shorter one. I created a longer one. I was like, maybe it's like when you go to Italy as an American and you talk louder. Like, they don't understand me. Maybe louder. Well, it's not a volume issue. It's a language issue. I had to figure out his language. His language was, he wanted to know 3 things that I needed his help with, 3 fires that I couldn't put out on my own. And he would go, yeah, try this, good. That was success. So once I aligned with understanding his value system, I was able to manage up, as they say. Like, we had a much better relationship. So sometimes with a difficult boss, if I can figure out, oh, this is a numbers person, and the things that matter most to them are numbers, and every time I bring them stories about how we're doing, we have, oh, it's not good. So I'm going to translate this idea into numbers and see if it changes our interaction. How do I help that person win? How does that, and now that's not to say, like, if they're a toxic, abusive person, I'm not saying figure out their value system. But if it's a normal bad working situation, I would go, okay, what's their value system? What do they care about? What can I do? How do I make them win? What does that look like? What, I'm thinking about that. And I think about it in a sense of a sales position. Like everybody's in sales to some degree. I'm trying to sell my ideas to that person. I'm trying to sell to them that I want an easier relationship with them. I'm trying to sell that I want to enjoy my job a little more. I might never love it. I might never. But I think you can fall in like with it. So like if I'm trying to sell him or her that position and I want my life to be easier in that building. And so I'm going to have to sell them something to make that happen. So then I go, okay. Then it makes it a game. Then the reason I grew close to every legal department I ever worked with was because I knew I was going to need that relationship later. And I knew that people like me, copywriters, often, I hate the legal team. They said no, And I was like, nope, I'm going to be Todd Krieger's buddy. He's probably pretty interesting. And nobody probably goes out of their way to be kind to the legal department. I'm going to do the reverse, and I think it's going to make my life easier too. And then lo and behold, my life is easier. And then I got to know Todd as a person. So I started to look at my corporate job as sales opportunities, and that's when it changed my ability to enjoy it.
Awesome. All right, last question.
Let's do it.
This honor goes to Kathy from Rhode Island. What are your tips on defining your why?
Well, I think the best moments list will get you there in a really, really fun way. The second thing I would say is I like whys, not why. I like lots of whys. I've never been a single person in life that had a single why, that just had one why. Like, what a boring life. Like, if you said, well, this is I just like reptiles. It's the only thing I'm into. I'm into herpetology. You would go, that can't be it. Everybody I've ever met has multiple whys. I have multiple whys. I have goals about my marriage, my parenting, my health, my whatever. So I like to give people permission to have multiple whys, because then it opens you up to try. The big thing there is experiment. Experiment. You don't know on the upfront if this is a goal you want to spend a year with. No wonder New Year's resolutions fail. You don't know in December. You don't know in January, I'm going to commit to this thing I've barely flirted. It's like getting married on the first date. You barely know that goal. So experiment, try some things, and you're going to learn as you go. Okay, it's March. Yeah, these 3 goals I thought mattered. No, none of them matter. But this one is firing me up. This other one's really interesting. So yeah, I always look at it that way. I'm going to experiment with a few desires, a few whys, and I'm going to do that by giving them some hours, and then I'm going to pay attention to what happens, because there's going to be a star in one of those 5, but I don't know which one yet. I haven't figured it out. I'm cycling. I tried cycling. I hated it. And my mistake was I overbought the bike. I should have borrowed a bike from a friend named Dean. Every cyclist who's serious has more than one bike.
Yeah.
They have a fleet.
The right number of bikes is the many you have plus one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a fleet. I should have borrowed one of my friend's bikes, ridden it 10 times, been like, nope, I'm a runner. But what I did was I bought an expensive carbon fiber bike and waste a lot of money. So I took an experiment, 6 months, and I was like, nah, not my thing. I don't feel shame about that any more than if I have friends who like to cycle, they hate running, cool. We both love different things. So I try to get people to do experiments versus I got to find my why.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, Kathy, thank you for that. And thanks everybody for tuning in. And make sure, before you go, as you're planning, you've heard your wife say she likes Jon Acuff. So make sure to get this book now for December, planning ahead.
Yeah.
My wife bugs me about stuff all the time. Oh, my wife's question.
Let's go.
Could we have time for this?
Yeah,
okay,
of course.
Lydia says yes. Okay. So my wife's question, so Krista from Franklin asks, wants
so funny you said from.
Krista from Franklin wants to know who was it harder on when you dropped your oldest off to college the first time? Was it harder on you or your wife?
It was harder on me just because I'm more emotional that way, where I think Jenny, she's great at looking at things and going, this was the goal. It would be really sad if she wasn't able to do this. In the same way, she's the same way like kindergarten. She didn't bawl when Ellie went to kindergarten. She said, I'd bawl if she didn't get to go. If there was something wrong or she couldn't, that would make me really sad. The goal as a parent is that you launch them. Whether that's you launch them to a job, to the military, to a gap year, whatever, you want them to launch. So she has a very pragmatic, rational attitude on things like that, where sometimes I'm a writer, and I get in my head, and I get adjective laden, you know, and like that. The moment I remember, we shut the door on the dorm. We say goodbye. We shut the door, and I turned to my wife while we're walking down the stairs, and I went to say, like, hey, go grab Ellie, like, because we were leaving, and we were leaving without her. That's where, like, I caught myself there, and that's where I was like, oh, like, that's where it got me. That's where it really. But then the things I learned are, you see them more than you think. The problem is culture gaslights you into thinking it's the end, and it's not. Like, it's just a different chapter. Like, a friend of mine, the way he says it is, he says, done and begun. It's done and begun. So that chapter was done, and then we've begun the next one. So, like, I get to talk to her on the phone. We spent all of July together last year. Like, we went to Sanford 3 times in the fall. Like, so there's way more moments than you think. But yeah, I would say it was definitely harder on me. Jenny's a very warm person. It's not to say she's not, but she just processes things different than I do. And that, I definitely had more emotion.
Yeah, just a big softie.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, awesome. Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in here. And make sure you go to premiercollectibles.com/Acuff to get your very own signed copy. Thanks again. And Jon, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Brian. Hey, this is Jon Acuff, New York Times best-selling author of 7 books and someone who's done a live signing. If you like the one you just watched, make sure you check out our YouTube channel. It's full of amazing authors having great conversations and signing books for viewers just like you. So make sure you subscribe, and thanks for watching today.